don't know me, I'm your brother. I was raised here in this living hell. You don't know my kind in your world. Fairly soon, time will tell. You are telling me the things you're gonna do for me.
Like everybody. Everybody's gonna need a couple.
I ain't blind and I don't like what I think I see. Taking it to the streets.
Let somebody else help you before I let you go.
Taking it to the streets.
I actually want to jump back to something that we started last week. You were talking about the importance of credit, and also that debt is an illusion. And you're talking also about comfort income for everyone, every resident in Calgary, and perhaps in the world as well, because of what's going to be going on in the future. But what I wanted to ask you is a little more clarification of what you mean by credit, because I know for me, when I first hear you use the word credit, I think, well, credit card. Well, but that's debt too. So what's the difference between credit and debt?
Yeah, good question, William. Credit is the word that is used in the banking system rather than asset backed. Okay. So, asset backed funding, a lot of people will talk about a new gold backed dollar in the US and stuff like that. They'll use that kind of language on the web, or, pretty much any kind of news. I think it even flips into the mainstream once in a while, where they'll bring that notion up of a gold backed dollar. But what's happened throughout history is that we've had a certain amount of gold, fraction of gold, leading to credit on that fraction. So that's what they refer to as fractional reserve lending. And a good example of that is when you take a down payment, say 5 or 10% of your cash in to buy a home, and then the bank takes, a promise basically from you that you'll pay them back. And then they put that asset, that home, on the bank's ledger, right, as an asset, which is kind of a mixed up mess if you think about it. But then they give you credit. Okay. They don't give you any money. They don't give you any asset backed money. They just give you credit because you've given them a fraction. They now have an asset to put on their books that if you don't pay, then it's theirs, kind of thing. You know how that whole thing works, the foreclosure process. And then they give you credit. So that's what I refer to as credit. And that credit is such an expansive thing in the world of banking. There's what they call credit lines. Okay. So if a business, like when I was in business, I had a credit line. Okay. And you may have as well. I'm not sure, but most of us who get into business on our own will have like a debt against a so-called debt against the property. And then to operate your business, you'll have a credit line, right? Mm-hmm. And that credit line, in most cases, you're paying an interest rate on it, but you don't have to pay it back. It's there for you to use. You can bring it up and drop it down, at your pleasure, kind of thing, at the bank's pleasure of nothing else, because they want it to be, used and manipulated up and down like that. It helps the whole story, but it's just simply a credit line, right? So, yeah, go ahead, William.
Sorry, I was going to jump in on that one because I was starting to follow, but I think there's just something that's not quite adding up for me, and I really want to get clear on this, because I figure if I can get clear, then everyone else watching who might be also questioning this can also get clear on it. But so let's use an example. Okay, I'm buying a house, and I give the bank 5 or 10%. Now this is this is a new, I assume this is a kind of a new credit system, like as we're changing our financial world. The first question or sub question I have to this subject is interest. Interest, isn't that also based on illusion? Isn't creating interest kind of like debt in a way too? Isn't it just kind of something made out of thin air? And the other question I have too is about the credit line. Is the credit line, like you said, it's not given to me in cash, but if I'm buying the house, who's paying the other 85, 95% so that I can move into the house? So there's some things there that aren't quite adding up for me. Can you clear me up on that?
Sure. Yeah. So we'll start with that other 85%. So that, again, the best way to put it is that it's just credit. The bank just creates that credit. And it'll sometimes be the paper gets traded, okay? The documents, the mortgage documents get traded, and there's value in that. That's a really wide open question, and it's hard to explain. I mean, but the better one is okay, sure.
Yeah, my thought was I kept thinking for some reason the credit going to the actual buyer, but actually, if the bank isn't supplying the money to fill out that 85% to buy the house, then maybe what they're doing is giving the seller the 85%, and they get the buyers 5-10% of cash, but the bank says, okay, now you've got a credit line for 85% because this guy's buying your house. Is that the way it would work, do you think?
That's a good way of putting it too, William, because the money that you buy the house with has to go somewhere, right? So the credit that the bank is giving goes to the seller of the house. So you're right, but it's all just a paper shuffle, like there's really no money ever exists. And it's just a flip-flopping of the idea of debtor and creditor and debtor and creditor, and until it happens, right? There's no money backing any of it. And the only thing that has any solid value is the home, which moves from the seller, his or her interest in it, to the buyer's interest in it. But the buyer's interest in it is held by the bank. So that's where the credit is created, based on that property, right?
Right. And then, the other part of that equation then would be me as the buyer now have well, let's be very specific. So let's say I put 10% down, because I think 5% might be a little low, but let's say 10%, because I know it's 20 or 25% normally, I think, in the old system. So I'm not sure if that would carry over in the new system or not. But for now, let's say 10%. So I put 10% down, I can move into the property, yay. The bank gives a line of credit to the seller. In the meantime, the bank has got to get that money back, I guess, or anyways, as the buyer, I would then, as I'm earning cash, pay back the bank on that amount until I pay them all back. The other part of the question I had that we haven't addressed yet, which is interest. Is interest even real anymore, or is that going away, or how do you see that?
Well, yeah, for now, we probably should leave that home thing out of the, if people want to ask more, we can go into that in more detail. But, we're thinking that the bank has something to back the money that they're giving us when we take out a mortgage, but they don't. They're just simply creating credit. And then we're giving them the home, basically, you get your name on the title, but with your promise on that mortgage means that the bank actually owns it. If you don't pay, they own it, right? It's just that quick and that simple. But now we can leave that topic and go on to the interest for a minute or two. And like you say, that's an important thing for people to realize, that it's simply based on the idea that the bank actually has something that they're lending you, right? And then expecting that you should pay them interest because they have something. They don't have anything. They get your house if you don't pay for it, but otherwise they're just creating a credit line. So what gives them the right to do that? Like administration costs, I can see something like that if you're talking in terms of a legitimate transaction, but interest is just complete, utter nonsense. And it's been for hundreds of years, like it's just it's usury, and it's sin is what it is. That's the bottom line. It's deception, and it's based on this idea that the bank is actually giving you something when they're not.
Great. Thank you, Randy. That clarifies things for me, and I'll happily move on now. Just to move on to some new subjects. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a little bit more about the actual candidacy. Running for mayor. First, wanted to find a little bit like progress report of how things have been going. You've been posting a few videos on your channel, and then also I want to talk about. Well, it started out as 3 C's, but I hear a rumor that it might be going into 4 C's or maybe even 5 C's. So maybe you can add to that a little bit too.
Yeah, that was fun. We're getting feedback now, from some of the viewers on the channel and whatnot, and encouragement, and it's great. I love that because our audience, as I always say, is the AU audience, is the gold, right? That's who you guys are. I want that golden audience, that authentic authorization from you guys. I want this to be about the people, not about me. I'm just the face man or the front man or whatever, like in this run. But yeah, we've had some fun this week. I wander around and I just talk to people and start the conversation up on the street or in a business or whatever. And I don't know, probably 4 out of 5 are autographing my documents, like once I start talking, they just seem to open up, and I'm kind of an ice cream salesman to Eskimos, William. So it's been, it's been not too bad, but they like to hear the authenticity, the truth, and just utter no nonsense. I'm just coming at it from a common sense perspective. If you're afraid, if you want to do more research, go to our YouTube channel first, and then I'll see you later, But if you'd like to give your autograph, fine. I went into the farmer's market today down here. It's just down the hill from where I live. Shit, I come out of there with 17 autographs. I was just so tickled pink, I'm up to 66, the magic number 66. That should twist a few heads. Everybody's got these fear porn and all this, protest language going on out there in the alternative media. And I'm not buying any of that stuff. I mean, there's definitely some nasty stuff in the world. I'm not going to deny that. And I'm not going to deny that there are children suffering. There's children suffering right down the hill from where I live with bloody masks on their face, so that's suffering to me. They do not need to be doing that to children. And yes, there's worse things that are going on this planet. From my perspective and where I deal with in the banking industry, which is connected to the military, the white hat military, if you want to use that language, and the confirmation I get from these high level banking officials connected to that military, there's such beautiful things happening in that area as well, as far as arrests of human trafficking, gangsters and criminals and stuff like that. That's been going on for a couple of years now, really hard and heavy, and it's picked up a lot lately. So I don't focus a lot of my energy on that, otherwise I'm going to get my own emotions up, because I don't want to put up with anything like that either. Don't get me wrong, and these things saw a lot of cheeks and noses in the past when I was a young man, but I don't want to fight anymore. I want to bring this down to the level of common sense and bring in the positive, good stories of love and what good is happening on this plane of existence that we live on. And it seems to be working pretty good for getting these autographs on my paperwork. So all I need is 100 for this legal document. and then I got to put in my deposit, and then I'm in the race officially. And again, the election's not till October, so it's a long way off.
You're 2/3 of the way there. Congratulations on the progress. I'm curious about a few more things too, in regards to where you've been so far in the city. I know you mentioned Northeast Calgary was a section that you were in this week, and do you have any plans for going, into different parts of the city this week?
You betcha. I mean, like I walk every day, like we said in our video last week. I average about 13 kilometers a day, and if it warms up, I'll probably pound out a few more. And tomorrow I'm planning on going over to the southwest, and I go out into the malls and things like that, and I just walk along the street, and if I see somebody kind of that seems like it'd be interesting, I'll walk up and just start an intention conversation. And so yeah, if you're in Calgary, watch for this, because that's what's going to be the trademark. And I'll usually wear a little tie of some kind and try and look like a mayor, and play the role. So you'll see me around, and if not, give me a call or tune in and comment on our YouTube channel, and I'll give out my phone number. I have no problem with that. I'll meet with anybody. Like it's going to be a grassroots movement, like in our intro that says, taking it to the streets. And I'm so thankful for that, William. That's a beautiful intro that you put together. Thank you.
Thank you, Randall. The one thing here, I know that I kind of asked 2 or 3 questions all at once, so I'm going to try to taper that back a little bit. But I was asking you about the 3 C's or 4 C's or 5 C's, and you were mentioning you got some feedback. But what are those C's, and do you have 3 or 4 or 5?
Well, it seems to be growing. I mean, the whole idea to start with was common law, common credit, and common sense. But I believe it was our dear Danusha that suggested a couple more, and be damned if I can remember exactly what they were. Do you have them written down there? Or?
I'll have to dig them up because I did not actually write them down. But I don't know. I could think of a few C words. Consciousness is another one that comes to mind.
Yes, exactly. No, and creation, creativism was one of our conversations last week. We talked about how capitalism and communism, which are 2 C's, another couple of C words, but they're just completely out of whack, 2 wings of the same bird as far as I'm concerned. And like we said, under capitalism, John Kenneth Galbraith's saying, which we'll quote once again, John F. Kennedy, economic advisor, a Canadian man, John Galbraith. No, I'm getting John's mixed up. And anyway, he, I don't want to sound like George Bush here. Anyway, I love Georgie. He was one of my favorite politicians. When he was ducking from them shoes, when that Iranian guy was throwing shoes at him. If I ever need a good laugh, sorry, I'm going off track here, but if I ever need a good laugh, I go to George Bush bloopers. Oh my God, it kills me. Like how we can continue to bring those characters into the public, like this one that's down in the States right now, that Joe Biden thing. Like, are you kidding me? Or the one that we've got in Ottawa. I don't want to mention too many names or we might get blocked on YouTube, but holy mackerel, you guys, like we've got some complete loonies out there in that world of politics. And is this one any better? Here I'm forgetting John Kenneth Galbraith's name already and fumbling around, so you can point your finger at me too if you want. But again, back to those C's. Under capitalism, man exploits man. Under communism, it's the exact opposite. So figure that one out, folks, and you'll see what I mean. We have got to get away from that 2-tiered, 2-winged duality mentality, legal looniverse that I call it, the good and the bad. There is only good. There's only one God, and there's a lack of good, okay, if there's anything. And that's where we got to focus our energy, is on that polarity of goodness and kindness and love and compassion to get this humanity back on track.
I'm jumping back to another question and answer that you gave earlier. you were saying that you want to, and it kind of ties in with your last answer too. You want to be able to give to the people of Calgary, the people who live and operate and work out of Calgary. And I couldn't help but wonder, well, is there anything in it for Lord Randall? Or, because, some people might think, oh, well, this guy's not really telling us what is in it for him, like so many of the people that work from us, worked in office for Calgary in the past have, always had some sort of an agenda or something, and it was always to their benefit. What, again, not downplaying anybody from the past, but politicians don't have the best track record. So I'm just thinking, is there anything in it for Lord Randall, and what would that be?
Joy. Number one. And it's really, that's a very good question, William, because coming at this from a perspective of non-ownership and no interest in ownership for the rest of my life, I'm done with that. I was a capitalist, and I conscientiously, I think, but I was a capitalist and I moved along in that world. Did I get any joy out of it? Well, I got joy out of serving the product, like, because we were selling natural beef to people. And I really got enjoyment when I was able to get in front of them in the retail environment from my ranch all the way to the retail environment and serve people. That was enjoyable. And, working with the animals was enjoyable, don't get me wrong. And I'd like to get back to that stage a bit, but it's all going to be under the nonprofit organization that I've created, right, in the legal jurisdiction. So that being said, will I manage that? Yes. Will I manage funds? Yes. But I'm never going to own anything, because not only is it a nonprofit registered, it's also under the realm of a common law pure trust, which means no ownership. That's the way the banking families and the high-end families, so-called elites of the world, run things, because they don't want to ever be in an ownership position. If you own, you owe. Okay, that's a simple term. If you own, you owe. So stay out of ownership and put your stuff into trusts, put your stuff into nonprofit organization if you're so inclined. I don't want to own anything, so that's why I put it there.
We're talking money again, but then I know, because you have that banking background, because we're definitely doing things in a very different way than what we used to do them in. So my objective here is just to get as much clarity for our viewers as well as for myself, to be completely honest. I wanted to talk about, the comfort income a little bit more, because we talked about it last time, but
Yep.
I started to think, okay, well, now, if we gave everybody, let's say, on average, it's going to be more for some, less for others, based on what their comfort is defined as in a dollar figure, I guess. That, when you look at that, you go, okay, well, Calgary has, let's say, 1.5 million people, and they're all getting, on average, $3,000 a month. You're looking at forking over $1 billion, $3 billion every month, and you're going, how is that possible? And you're not getting it from tax money, tax collected. How is that happening? Can you explain how that money is generated? And I'm sure it's along the same lines as the credit that we talked about earlier. But again, just to clarify that a little bit more, and then we'll move into we're going to move into your cows after this. How about that?
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Okay. This is going to take a little bit of time, but I want to do my best to bring this into a place where people can comprehend what I'm saying. Okay. So, first off, you said it might be more or less for certain people. That's not the way I see it. It would be the same for everybody. So the number that we came up with last week, for instance, was $3,000, and that would be comfortable in Calgary. So maybe it's $3,500 in Vancouver, if that's what you mean. Like if it's kind of based on your environment. Is that what you're meaning?
Just to clarify real quick, and then let you get back to your answer. I was thinking, there may be some people, for example, if they're handicapped or they have more expenses, or they're, well, again, so much is changing, it's hard to know if there's even going to be taxes. But assuming that taxes will exist, continue to, some people will be paying higher taxes. So people's expenses vary in depending on where they live and also what expenses they have in their life. So that's why I was thinking there was going to be more of a variety, rather than a flat rate for everyone across the board.
Well, and again, I'm presenting an idea, okay? And this is going to have to go in front of the people to make those kind of choices. Handicap, yes, there's going to be special needs and stuff like that. But I guess the bottom line is and the idea of tax rates and stuff, I don't want to dive into that much, because I feel as if taxes are going to disappear by that time, personal taxes anyway, and maybe all taxes. But by the transition period, we'll see us saying, okay, what is a comfort income in each, let's just say city or province or whatever, and then that would be the basis. But for someone in a different tax bracket, it's the same, if you're talking taxes. But the disability issue, that would be a whole different thing, and there are definitely conditions there. But I think $3,000 in my city would pretty much cover a lot of that as well. There's a medical side of this that we're not including in that comfort income. So there may be a separate, like you say, for disabilities and for health and stuff like that. But yeah, keeping it simple, we would just say, it's a flat amount for every human being. So now we'll go to that next part of the question of like the volume. How, like you say, 3 million people, $3,000 a piece, that's $9 billion, right? That's a lot of money. And that, I think the province of Alberta is actually more than that now. However, the deception of this credit system is what's being exposed, right? And the fact that we can create however much we want. And they've proven that this year by just continuing to autograph documents to create another $300 billion. Well, why not 500 billion? Why not $1 trillion? Why not? You're doing it the same way. You're just agreeing and autographing, right? AG, agreement, and autograph, AU, using the silver and the gold, to create money out of thin air. So why not? If people knew that simple truth, that debt is an illusion and all of this game that's going on, there'd either be a revolution or we're just going to have to step in with this reality that I'm talking about and just accept that and start doling it out and forget that idea of that ridiculous notion of debt, because it's just complete insanity. We've explained it on our channel, William, in the past, where I've said, I use those terms, PB as in primary banking, SB as in secondary banking. SB being where this debt idea is created, right? PB being where the credit idea is created based on the autograph and the agreement. So PB being lead, turning into gold with the autograph, AU, and an agreement, AG, silver, playing games. They're just, the people who created this are just laughing and thinking, oh, look how easy they fell into this idea. We're just playing around with AG and AU and PB and SB. And the most important one of those four is the term SB, secondary banking, where they just make up the idea of debt. And that term and those letters refer to in the elements, the tables that I'm talking about, periodic tables with AU being gold, AG being silver, PB being lead. SB is antimony. In other words, anti-money, debt. Created just that like magic, eh? So we're going to bring back in alchemy, which is that magic adding the element of love and truth. because love is truth and truth is love, brother. And we know that.
Cool, fantastic. That sounds very exciting. I kind of feel like there's going to be a huge learning curve or a relearning curve or an unlearning curve followed by a new relearning curve. There's a lot there. There's definitely a lot there. But as I promised, I was going to talk cows now. You had mentioned earlier that you had been raising cattle, raising beef, and you were selling natural beef. Now, I remember in one of your videos from the past, you talked a little bit about that, and you had mentioned you don't go into organic, that organic field, but you do raise them as healthy as possible, obviously. Can you tell us why not organic, and why did you choose to go just the natural side?
Well, I have a really, actually, I haven't run into him for quite a few years now. I shouldn't call him a really good friend then if I haven't seen him for a long time, but a man who wrote a book, Is It Organic? His name is Misha Popov. And he was an inspector for the government, CFIA, I believe, but or maybe he was on the side of organic inspection, I think. And he wrote this book, and it was like, blew you away. Like, what is organic? You know, like, where do you qualify? And there's so many rules involved with that. And then there's costs involved with that. So the people that are growing organic, it costs them an arm and a leg. That's why it costs so much more in the store, because that cost has to be passed on to somebody. So it's just another government scheme to, draw money and fool around with money, is all that term organic is about in my mind. Is it a good term? The word, yes, I love the word, but it's been, bastardized by government once again, by, becoming a monetary game rather than just simple truth. When in reality, whenever you add a chemical or farm in a chemical manner, those are the people that should be paying extra. That's where the extra cost should come in. It should be the other way around. So that's why I say natural is, in my mind, the simplest term, because then you're just telling your truth. And as we did for years in our store, we just called it natural beef. People came in, they could see me, they could talk to me. And some of the other producers would come into the store as well. And we had signs up, we had our declaration, if you want to call it that we're raising it naturally. We're not using chemicals. We're not using inputs like the three R's was, in those days, it was Ralgro, ractopamine, and now it's been a couple of years, I can't remember the third R, but it was like, that's what the traditional cattle industry raises cattle like. They put these implants in the cattle's ears, they feed them rumensin, it's called, in their feed, so that they can pump up the barley and cause these animals not to basically shit themselves on that high protein diet, and then they put on a lot more fat that way. But they use a chemical to do that, right? Rather than just feeding the animal either natural grass or a high forage based diet to its final destination, which is the harvest facility, that I like to term it. And that's one of the projects that our nonprofit organization is heading towards. And we're going to build a harvest facility for animals naturally raised, and that's going to come. And I'm never going to stop until that happens. It's one of my heartfelt desires to see that happen on this earth. And that's why I got into the banking industry to start.
Randy, I'm going to jump in here too. I wanted to, something popped in my head in relation to this subject. Like I've grown up on organic foods and things of that nature, and natural healing and that kind of thing. But when I was young, a lot younger, actually, when I ran into some health issues, I started to notice that, sadly, the word natural was being abused. You'd see natural on things that were like loaded with sugar and all that kind of stuff. So is there anything that you have as an intention around avoiding the abuses of words like natural? Because I mean, you will raise it natural, and your natural definition is going to be different than someone else who loads it full of, well, that drug, for example, that you just mentioned. So do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, I don't know if you don't sound like a kind of person who wants to control things and control people, but at the same time, there are abuses that are there that I think you have to kind of be mindful of. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the thoughts on that are that, you know, we start to look at value chains, if you want to call it that, or, you know, direct marketing from the farms to the people, those kind of community-minded marketing programs, right? So then the words that you're saying, like, you know, there's word natural on all kinds of products in the big grocery chains, in Walmart or whatever, all over the place, right?
Yep.
And how do you know? You know, because you're not connected to that producer in any way. Walmart's buying it at the cheapest price they can get and pumping it out with that name on it, right? So this has been the agenda of, I'm going to use the term, the globalist agenda, right? Is to drive that consumer into these big stores and eliminate that middleman, that mom and pop kind of a store, and make it as difficult as possible for that reality to happen, that value chain direct from the land to the consumer. So when this happens at this private funding level that I'm talking about, where these projects are going to come into existence, then these producers will either, you know, attach to a specific retailer that they're going to work with, and present their product, you know, in as authentic and as natural and you know, way as they possibly can, or do it themselves. You know, get that grassroots movement right from the farm into the cities. And that can happen when the monetary side of this changes and those restrictions that are binding people aren't there anymore. Then you're going to see a lot more opportunity for, you know, production, not only of food, but other products as well, that will make its way to the consumer without the typical big box store design, which has been the push for how many years, you know, like most of yours in my lifetime, like William.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Randall, I think we're running a little long on time now, but I wanted to ask you one more. Actually, it's a pretty important question, and probably it should have been the very first question I asked you last week, but I don't think we quite got to it. We kind of talked around it a little bit, I think. But I'm just going to ask it. Why did you choose to run for mayor, and why did you choose to run for mayor now?
Well, you know, I had a little bit of a political career when I was in the cattle industry for a lot of years. I tried to make some changes, I guess you could say, from the level of beef politics. So I have a little bit of experience in that realm. But as I went along, I thought, God, you know, I want to serve the public in some manner, you know, rather than just through the nonprofit organization, because I do feel as if I have a lot of, I don't know what you want to call it, knowledge to share, but I like to talk. I like to visit with people. I like people in general. So I want to give, you know, I want to give something to the community. But in the realm of provincial or federal politics, it would be completely a waste of my time, because I'd have to get involved with a party of some kind. And that's not going to happen, because my views are so different than everybody else that it would be impossible for me to run for the, you know, even a seat in some jurisdiction, some ward, as they call it, or whatever, constituency, I guess they use that word. Wards are in the city. That word just drives me nuts, you know, like a ward. Why would you call the people in a certain part of the city a ward? Like, that just reeks of hospitalization of mental patients to me, you know, it just drives me nuts. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. But, you know, in any provincial or federal jurisdiction, politically, in the legal, it would be impossible for me to make any headway. The mayoralty position is unique because you can run with a small deposit and 100 people. And, you know, you just take your chances, you know, that's how she works. And am I a long shot? At this point in time in our collective reality, shit, man, I'm such a long shot, it's not even funny. But I can see these changes happening in our collective civilization, if you want to call it that, around the world, let alone in Calgary. And I know that by the time this election rolls around, there's going to be so many changes that people are going to go, oh, what the hell, give them a chance, you know? So that was the mayoralty decision, you know, and on my part. And like I say, you know, then it's joyful. And I live here in Calgary right now anyway. If I, you know, am out in and out of the city, that's not a big deal. Like I can come and go to be there. And, you know, we're going to put some chairs out on the grass in the summer instead of these council meetings in a black cube in the middle of City Hall. Like, what the hell they built that thing for is beyond me. It's kind of a little bit weird. But there's a flat roof on top of our City Hall too. So I was thinking, well, you know, we could either plant some grass up there or else just take some lawn chairs on a nice sunny day and up we go. We'll do a little Wim Hof breathing session before the council meeting starts, and then poof, we'll get at her right up there on top of the roof. But so you see what I mean by a long shot? People are maybe going to listen to that part and say, oh God, he's nuts. But we'll come back on track in future videos, William, because yeah, it's about time to end this one. And we'll get a little more serious again, okay? And if people have seen this one for the first time, please go back to the first one, because we were a little more serious in that one. And it was a little maybe easier on the mind than the joking around I've done today on this one. So.
All right, Randall, that sounds fantastic. Your intention this week is to get your other 34 signature autographs. Sorry, you almost got caught me saying it, but 34 more autographs. You think you're going to get there this week?
Oh yeah, no problem. I mean, yeah, it's 17 at the farmer's market this afternoon. So all I got to do is find another farmer's market and I'm good to go. But
2 more farmer's market worths and you'll be set.
And yeah, I've got a few more meetings set up this week with some, you know, there's some, believe it or not, there's some like wealthy people and some businesses and stuff like that are taking me pretty seriously, and some groups that are looking at what I have to say. And, you know, again, go back to the last video if you didn't get any of the good stuff out of this one. But I think it's, you know, we'll continue on and give more information as we go along. There's nothing to hide. If you guys have questions, please post them in the comments, and then William can bring them up next week for us. And, you know, we'd love to have your input. And I'll let you say a few more words and then we'll end it with our little thing. And
well, my few more words are basically, Randall, can you give us a final blessing to close today's interview?
So, common law, common credit, common sense. What else did we come up with? Comfort income, consciousness. That was a beautiful one. So lots of C's going into this 5th dimension with 5 C's. So with peace, harmony, love, abundance, and freedom for everyone and everything every day on our minds, William and I saying we'll catch you later with abundance, sovereignty, health, love, and euphoria. Go out and have some fun this week, you guys. We're gonna. Love you.